So, hi, Daniel. This is Pramit from Digital Mafia Talkies. As a fan of folk horror movies, I really liked Starwaker. Like the themes that you tackle, the heavy atmosphere, the performances was really, really well done. So, my first question to you is that what motivated you to adapt Andrew Michael Hurley's book, and what was the process of turning it into a feature-length film?
I was aware of Andrew's work before Starvaker. I was a big fan of The Lonely Devil's Day, and it's a genre I love as well. You know, I grew up watching horror, and then as I got a bit older, I got into folk creepier stories. You know, things that aren't necessarily gory or slashes, but things that unsettle you or creep you out. Ghost stories. So I was wanting to do something like that as well. And then Starvaker came along. I was talking to a producer. They mentioned Tessa Ross, and she mentioned that Andrew was about to release this book, Starvaker. So I got hold of a promo copy and read it, and sort of fell in love with it. You know, I loved what he was doing, doing in regards to the nature of the brown hair and what that symbolized in the story, and how it was tapping into something like ancient and old, like old storytelling though as well, like going right back to Greek mythology and how that got trickled down through paganism, and then also into like after the Reformation, and like how hairs are always connected to witchcraft and witches, and it was like sort of dealing with all these things in a very subtle way, but at the same time it was had a strong visual element to it. So I got very excited about adapting that, and that's why I felt like I could adapt it as well, because it did have that strong visual element to it. You know, this kind of very detailed macro like photography about the inner parts of the hair and how they like sort of represent the inner workings of this relationship as well. This kind of breakdown of a relationship and then the rebuilding of it was kind of like what was happening with the hair, right? It was kind of rebuilding itself the same way this relationship was. So that was like that was the process as well in the development and the adaptation. It was like trying to sort of focus on that, um, possibly more so than the book as well. You know, this kind of looking at their relationship and trying to find a way to bring them together through the kind of power of this sort of mystical, like gothic uh, notion of love, really, or sort of springtime or rebirth.
And like you're talking about the hair, so I have to bring it up. Like initially, when I started watching the movie, and like there was a couple dealing with loss of a child, so my mind automatically went to like Pet Cemetery and Hereditary and Antichrist. But as soon as the hair came in, like the rabbit came in, like it became its own thing. So what was it like capturing that tone? Like you're going on an absurd supernatural aspect, you're bringing in a supernatural aspect, but you're also conveying the bleakness, the sadness and the desperation of this couple. So what was it like calibrating that tone?
I think that was part. It suits the theme, right? This idea that you're dealing with grief, and it's just grief can be crazy and messed up, and all sorts of you can have all sorts of thoughts and feelings, and that was part of it as well. Like, I was trying to do that, bring that into the nature of the film itself. Like the film takes these kinds of left turns, right? It starts off in quite a sort of serious tone, and then it sort of goes into that ghost story space when Mrs. Ford arrives and they have that kind of meditation. And that feels like a different film to the beginning. And then the hair arrives, like you say, and then suddenly it turns into a different film again. And for me, it was like that's the nature of grief, you know, crazy things can happen. And it's also the kind of story I think I would like to see as well. I love folk horror, and folk horror does that as well. You know, it makes you. It's designed to sort of make you feel uncomfortable, and to do strange and uncanny things as well, and to not be afraid of like being weird. So that's what I was trying to do. And also, it's very much of its time. I was trying to create something that looked like it came from the 70s. And I feel like that's would have been the way that they would have done it, used a puppet with animatronics, especially if it was a low budget film. So yeah, it was like, right, I'm trying to emulate that as well.
And like, what was your conversations like with the production design team in terms of making the like the lore, the history of the place seem tangible? Like, make it seem make you Google whether if this is true or not. Like you're talking about the animatronic hair, then you have all these journals, these documents. So how what was the process of bringing that part of the story to life?
Research, really, watching lots of old films as well, lots of documentaries from the 70s. In the UK, we have websites like the Yorkshire Film Archives. So I was on there a lot watching old documentaries about archaeology and what life was like in the 70s in the Yorkshire Dales. And yeah, keep staying true to that. And again, the art director and production designer, they went off and did so much research. They had endless amounts of images that we just put up on all the walls all the way through production, the unit base and production, and just letting everyone's kind of soak it in.
And
Um,
the history of these two characters, like Richard and Juliet, the history of these two characters is a bit ambiguous, and the future of these two characters are ambiguous. So, was that always the plan to keep like put the audience in the present and not really go into the past, or just allude to what is going to happen in the future?
yeah, I think so. There's like a symbolic element to the ending, to the final image. It was supposed to be sort of feel like a kind of image of the Virgin Mary or something. Something about like springtime, um, and about the resurrection. That it sort of didn't matter. If the audience are thinking about what happens next, I think at the end of the film, I feel like I haven't quite got it right. It should be less about the realism, but more about what the point of it all is. That's why I also had like Richard like sing a song at the end as well. This kind of melody that you've heard all the way through the film on the score, then right at the end, the character in the film sings that same melody, and it's a song, and so then it becomes like it no longer real. It becomes like a nursery rhyme or like a folk song. So hopefully you're not thinking about that at the end. But I did a bit of work with the backstory of the characters. Like there is at the beginning, there's Richard talks about his childhood, and this was his childhood home, and how he sort of comes back, even though he's had like a not a very nice childhood there. He's had a very difficult relationship with his father. He wants to come back to the land. He wants to come back there to give his son the kind of life that he wish he had there. So I felt like that was enough. You only needed to know that about them, really.
You mentioned the song, so is that really sung by Matt Smith and Moffat Clark?
Yeah, yeah.
And we going to get a extended edition because we get only a glimpse of that song, and it's really beautiful.
I don't know. That's a good question. I think they're gonna. I think the soundtrack's gonna be released. So maybe I'll talk to Matthew Herbert, the composer, about that and see if he can make an extended version of that song because it is beautiful and Matt's got a nice, a delicate voice on it as well. So it's like we should get a longer version of that for sure.
And Matt and Moffat, both of them have like huge horror films under the belt. So what was it like working with them? Like, what did they bring to the table? Do you have any favorite scenes between them?
They brought they both brought like an energy and a passion to it. And I think because they'd both worked on big shows before it, that they were happy to be on location shooting in a real place because quite a lot of their shows are on green screen or in a studio, and so I think they were happy to be out there shooting a film in the way that they would have been shot in the 70s. They found that very liberating for them. And Matt Smith was like just happy to get stuck in and get his hands dirty and get underneath his character. And the same with Morvid as well. She's a big fan of these kinds of stories. She's grew up on folklore and um so it was just in her nature anyway, you know. She just knew how to you know, represent this character. So it was very easy dealing with them both. So many things went wrong on this production, but the one thing that kept me going was Matt and Miv and just how creative they were, you know. Like, for example, I was losing I was just like losing locations and scenes. I was having to like change the scenes the night before the shoot, so I would turn up the next day with like brand new scenes, and quite a lot of actors would tell you to, you know, to get lost. But both Matt and Miv were just they actually seemed to enjoy it. You know, they were happy to try different things out all the time. So they were both excellent.
And by the way, I might be wrong about this, but like I saw a lot of film grain throughout the film. So how much was it actually shot on film, or was it like shot on digital and then scanned on films? Like what was the process?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to shoot on film, but again, we didn't. There wasn't the money, and it was too difficult with the animatronics and everything. So that was a compromise. We shot it digitally, but I also got some wicked like old vintage lenses, 70s anamorphic lenses, and then printed it to film like a 35 mil film. But we did it with a cheaper version of that, so it was really grainy and messy and dirty. Actually, it was too much in the end, so I had to spend quite a bit of time painting it out as well. All the smudges and smears on it. I think it looks great though. The texture and the colors, it transformed it, printed it onto film. That chemical process really made like the greens and the reds and things pop. It was beautiful.
Right. My final question to you is that, like, what are some of the thoughts and opinions about the movie's themes and messaging that you want like viewers to walk away with after watching Star Vehicle?
Um, I think it's to I don't want the audience to feel. I think like the same feeling I had after I read the book, which is like you've experienced something kind of strange and uncanny, but also insightful. You know, it's showing you the inner lives of this relationship, and it's very sensitive to that, and it's showing you how that how complicated and messy grief can be for people. And then also it's on top of that, it becomes then about how these stories are usually passed down through folklore or through folk tales, you know. And that's the nature of this story as well. It's in order to digest these stories, we have to transform them into something that we can sort of accept. So yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Daniel. I like the film. I hope it gets the appreciation that it deserves. And I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Nice talking to you.